You've probably heard of a little video game called Dwarf Fortress, the independently developed and originally crowdfunded indie darling developed by Zach and Tarn Adams of Bay 12 Games. While the game is most widely known for its massive world generation, history generation, and fortress mode, where you build a colony of dwarves, the game has a second mode that doesn't get talked about quite as much: Adventure Mode. Adventure Mode is an open-world sandbox, allowing you to explore the worlds that you've generated in a kind of murder hobo simulator, with some light life sim elements, and some survival stuff for good measure. When Dwarf Fortress released on Steam, Adventure Mode was unavailable. The reason for this was it still needed a UI rewrite. So essentially, a whole third of the game wasn't available when Dwarf Fortress launched on Steam in December 2022. But Zach and Tarn assured the community that they would get to working on it as swiftly as possible. And they did. And as time has slowly chugged along, the developers have been diligently working on transforming Adventure Mode from the ASCII madness that it once was into a more accessible mode, something more akin to the Fortress Mode release. Adventure Mode would allow players to fully explore and experience the turn-based combat and worlds that their game has generated, including visiting their old fortresses, or assassinating some goblin they don't like. In the last month, Adventure Mode has been nearing completion. The only thing left to complete is some polish around the new quest structure and finishing up the tutorials, which leads me to believe that now is a good time to start exploring as we near the inevitable release into the main branch, because there's something specific that's been added: chosen quest lines. And my curiosity has honestly gotten the better of me. So thus, let's explore what new magic systems have been added to Dwarf Fortress, and get to know our own gods a little better. The patch also includes some new locations and dungeons as part of these quest lines. So of course I had to generate a new world. Once I had the world generated, I noticed a bunch of new sites everywhere, which was very intriguing. After dressing up my first character and naming them Olin Ancient Dungeon after the new locations, we dove into the gameplay. After powering through the rather nifty UI overview tutorial thingamajig, we are greeted by our god, Spoogok, a human god. In this world, we were fortunate or unfortunate enough to only have a human option as our starting faction. So our god is a human god. But we are playing a dwarf, of course, who appears to already be over-encumbered. Womp womp. I'm already regretting skimping out on those strength stats. But our god says, "Greetings, I am Spoogok. I have chosen you as my instrument of nightmares. The remnants of my creation, Cosmic Moonstone, belong with my followers, the Umbral Faith. Seek out the assaulted abbey and fulfill your destiny." Well, they sound friendly. I guess we'll have to find whatever this assaulted abbey is by exploring the town. After finding the exit to the goddamn castle, me and my trusty donkey exit the building and begin perusing the local shops. A few moments later, I encounter a human monk who greets us and introduces themselves as Riloth Namegrape. Praise treachery. You seem very trustworthy. So I inquire about any local troubles, and they promptly inform me that an individual named Quosa Large Raptors wants the confusing smokes, the large linen loincloth returned, and they tell us that they heard that it was held by Ethra, Rout Shelters. How dare you steal somebody's underwear? We must return that at once. That's a crime that only a weeb would commit. The human monk also informs us that it's in this very city, and in fact being kept in the Hole of Virginity, the local catacombs. Where, of course, they put all the rotting corpses after they die of unnatural causes or natural causes. We must set off at once. I'm sure that this godly quest thingy can wait. As I began exploring, I wandered through the local market and spotted a couple merchants beating the ever-living crap out of each other. I had to stop and ask what was up, and they said they got into an argument. Checks out. But fortunately, right next to the markets was the Hole of Virginity, the local catacombs. We dove inside, head first, as you do. Landing on all 4 feet like a cat, we began exploring the catacombs. It's full of the normal accoutrements that you would expect in catacombs. Many, many corpses. And statues of the corpses before they were corpses, back when they were peoples. There's also various items that these peoples owned when they were not dead, and plenty of very welcoming individuals, like this one who's screaming and enraged at all enemies. Thankfully, I'm not an enemy. I continued to explore through the various tunnels and holes in the ground, and while walking along this really long hallway, I actually encountered the person who lost the item, who's a local lieutenant. "Hello, Quosa Large Raptors." Apparently my dwarf knows this person because they address us by name immediately, and they say it's good to see us. Well, we cannot delay, we must return their panties, so let's be off. And it only would take a few more staircases before we find our committer of the crime, the leader Ethra, Lasod Jasro, who is the leader of this gang or group or military organization or whatever, who they're both part of. So essentially, this lady joined this group and the leader, Ethra, stole her underwear. Well, that simply won't do. Initially, I decided to confront him about them, and he says praise thralldom. Also seems to check out, honestly. I ask him about any troubles to see if this is something that's been troubling him, and he informs us of something completely different, relating to some scepter. Well, I could care less about your damn scepter, man. Realizing he's getting a little bit annoyed with my questions, I decide to do the logical thing, which is make a demand. And I demand that he hand the panties over, to which he responds, over my dead body. So, I had to take matters into my own pointy stick, and provide him with one. A dead body, that is. So I pull out my sword and shield, and begin doing my best to remove his forehead, by slashing at him. The fight went pretty well for the most part, aside from the fact that my donkey took a lot of really bad hits from his goonies, and soon lost his stomach lining, and his guts spilled out. Poor donkey. And as for me, well, things went a little bit better for us, because our main dueling partner was whacking us with the underwear, instead of, hitting us with an actual weapon. He did try to hit us with his shield, but it wasn't particularly effective. After removing his ear and his nose in the fighting, I managed to scratch him pretty badly in his right hand. This was, of course, the hand that was clenching his ill-begotten undies. And so I swiftly invade his personal space and pick them up, and give them a quick dust-off, just so that they're not covered in the man's blood. Although maybe that's a selling point at this point, who knows. I grab my donkey by what's left of its innards, and drag it down the stairs with me, doing my best to escape from the criminal gang. As I'm making my grand getaway, George Clooney would be proud. My best friend and partner in crime, or justice, should I say, passes away on the floor. Rest in peace, donkey. You will be sorely missed for the next 90 seconds until I find the person that I'm trying to give this item to, because I already kind of forgot, to be honest. And a few moments later, I find Our Lady. I say hello again, and she says it's good to see me. Well, madame, I've got a gift for you. Justice has been served. And I return her glorious panties to her. And she says, it's terrific. Thank you for returning my treasure. No problem, madam. At this point, I realized that the entire point of this run was for me to try and attempt to see these godlike quests. So I guess it's time to go back to the actual castle and figure out who I should be talking to get this questline going. So I wander back to the starting location, and after babbling at a few people, I found somebody who seemed very promising. The Holy Bottle. We had a chat, and after going through our general pleasantries, I figured out that I had the wrong person. But right next to them was someone named Sodal, who had the title of Sacred Mold. Since we are, of course, going with the God of Nightmares, because that was our only option, that seemed pretty likely that was probably who we were looking for. So we offer our service, and just like that, the quest line begins. After asking how may I serve the Umbral Faith, they inform us, blessed be Spugok and the Chosen. You are hereby charged to retrieve the Cosmic Moonstone from Sadmine for the Umbral Faith. Sounds like a cheerful, happy place. Well, time to go camping, I guess. As we wandered the wilds, we almost immediately got attacked by a bunch of wild parrots. It was horrifying. Fortunately, I have a sword that worked quite efficiently. I'm gonna have nightmares about that one for a while. And then the wilderness survival begins. Melting snow for water, of course. Food supplies were getting a little low, but nothing too catastrophic yet. But as we got closer to our destination, food supplies got terrifyingly low, and because it was very early spring, there wasn't any harvestable plants around. So I spent an upsetting amount of time running around outside in the forest trying to catch an ox. It required sneaking up behind it repeatedly until I could finally land a hit on one of its feet. That took way too long. I should have brought something that was throwable. I even had to drop my shield so that I could keep up with it, but thankfully, eventually we caught up, or it tired out enough that I was able to execute it and turn it into burgers. Delicious. Once that annoying as hell task was complete, I was able to relocate my shield. Twitch chat didn't think I could do it. I proved you wrong. Who here was saying that I was never going to be able to find it? I knew better. You just didn't believe me. And then wandered off to our first mysterious lair, which was where we were told to go to gather this item for this quest, and immediately find a human kicking the crap out of two goblins in this location. Fascinating. So we decided to John Wick it and join in the fight. Thankfully, the chubby human swordsman cultist was already quite injured. However, we noticed that they drank some weird solution, which seemed to heal their wounds. Well, that's concerning. Nothing a little bit of combat tactics and sharp edges won't fix, however. Even though they were able to put up a pretty hefty fight, and it definitely challenged our abilities, I was eventually able to take out every single one of them. And then I moved down the stairs in the middle of the room, seeing another goblin off in the corner. Almost immediately I spotted a weapon trap, which was kind of terrifying, and the cosmic moonstone that we needed. The goblin didn't seem to see us, so I just carefully walked around it and picked up the cosmic moonstone. And as I moved back over to the stairs, I decided to ask the goblin what's up. They immediately acted unfriendly and began shooting bolts at me, so I ran away in fear, as a normal dwarf should. Sometime later, I returned home and delivered the cosmic moonstone to Sodal, the sacred mold. And they inform us the Umbral Faith believes that their primordial remnants, such as this cosmic moonstone, belong back in their rightful home. Any should be brought to the sanctuary of ferrying in Craze Clan, or give it to one of us. While I have no idea what a Craze Clan is, apparently it's a local town, so I just decided to give it to this person. Selecting it in the Offer Items screen, we promptly hand it over. I ask them for another quest, and they inform us, Spugok and the Chosen, you are hereby charged to retrieve the Cosmic Morning Star from Gutter Snarled for the Umbral Faith. Well, that seems a little bit more complicated, but also more interesting than a moonstone. Well, I guess we best be off. While I was wandering towards the new quest location, I discovered another lair and decided to pop in, and began dueling with the goblins inside. I was curious about these unusual liquids, which we were unable to acquire in the first location, as that pesky human drank it all. But there was plenty of goblins here, and I had a pretty effective longsword, so I slashed them up as best I could, removing their limbs, and making it difficult for them to walk without any legs. And then, again, a human popped out, another cultist it seems. This wavy hair human swordsman lunar cultist began attacking us, and we did our best to wrestle with him. We broke a few hands, took some damage ourselves, but after a little bit of careful kiting and sprinting away, even after taking some massive injuries on my right arm, having to drop my shield, we were eventually able to reach onto the belt of the human and grab their water skin, and we consumed the curious solution within it. Just a few moments later, we had fewer damaged tissues, and my wounds began to close, and even my teeth regrew. These are the procedurally generated healing potions that Dwarf Fortress now includes. There's also procedurally generated healing foods, which are either jelly, dough, or bread things. These liquids act as water, do not freeze, and can be consumed to heal all injuries. Frankly, kind of a useful substance to have around. Since my wounds had healed, and that human was still in distress, I decided to simply remove his head, as that would make the rest of my life easier for me. Maybe not him so much. And I'm going to show you a little trick here. I take the curious solution, because there's only one left in my inventory, I drop it on the ground, and then pick it up with my backpack. This duplicates it into the amount of space I have in my backpack. I also noticed that it weighs nothing, so now I have 48 curious solution. Curiouser and curiouser. Anyways, off to the next quest location, after I execute the last goblin in the basement anyway. And of course take all of their stuff. So now I run off to the mysterious palace, where this so-called Cosmic Morning Star resides. I decided to go in the dead of night and use my sneaking skill, and move as slowly and carefully as possible as to not wake anybody up. Sneaking mostly lets you see the vision cones, and crawling gives me the highest stealth score. As I wander through the area, I find some pots that have more mysterious solutions in it. Fortunately, I already have plenty. And old Olin here continues to wander through the goblin-infested palace, looking for some sort of outcome or final room. I was getting a little bit thirsty, so I consumed more of the mysterious solution, and it makes one of my teeth grow back. I didn't even know I'd lost it. Nifty. And while I was cowering in the corner trying to get some rest, a goblin woke up and wandered over. Well, time to remove your forehead, or whatever limbs you may have. Was able to stab him pretty swiftly with my steel two-handed sword, which at this point I was using two hands to wield. Our commotion hadn't appeared to wake up the other goblin in the room. Must be a really deep sleeper. As I began to move towards him to remove his limbs, it appears that I had either awoken something or made something aware of my presence with the commotion, for I heard a booming voice in the distance, and it was coming from a muscular Mace Lord Elder of the Moon. He says, "Is that a weapon? What is it this time?" Stomping up the stairs and emerging from the trapdoor, he approached me and said, "Death, I am not uneasy," about the goblin that I turned into spaghetti in the corner. Well, he didn't seem too friendly, so I began to fight with him as quickly as I could, and I made a quick attack directly at his hand, the one containing that mace, and stabbed him directly in the right hand with my steel two-handed sword, which tore apart the muscle and caused him to drop that mace. Perhaps I can make a quick exit. After a couple careful dodges, I was able to eventually land where he dropped the mace, with his hand gushing blood, of course. I picked it up and took my shield back out and checked my abilities screen. I'd gained an ability, the ability to blind. Ability to me? I suppose. I truly am the chosen one. What kind of ability is that? Upon checking the wiki, it kinda seems that being blinded doesn't give the player any advantage in combat if the enemy is blinded. See. All it does is it removes their ability to see, which means if they haven't been aggroed by you, they can't see you. But if they're already aggroed, like this guy is, blinding him won't actually do anything. It'll just simply make him unable to see me if he loses me. So I still have to get away from him. But it's a small buff, if nothing else. Also, a pretty nifty mace. I wonder how heavy it is. If this is like the same weight as adamantine, it's gonna be pretty lackluster. But I decided to give it a shot anyway, and began dodging and dueling with him. Very quickly, this would prove to be a massive mistake, as this Mace Lord drastically outskilled me in almost every way. Pushing me in circles around the room, I began just simply dodging, because that was all I could do. Dodging, 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 and he kept smacking at me. Because whenever I would try to stop and fight, I would lose some portion of my ability to function, and have to chug a bunch of potions. As the fight continued, I realized that I'd made a great mistake, which would probably lead to my doom. While the healing potions do heal wounds, they don't heal your energy. So if you're getting tired after a long battle, you're not going to recover that. And so eventually, I was beaten into submission and began trying to just simply run away with dodging. I got so desperate that I even threw my sword at him, which didn't even hit him. He dodged it perfectly. I continued trying to dodge and at most maybe block his attacks, but he eventually bested me as I fell into exhaustion. I'd thrown what little items I had left at him, and he continued smacking me and whacking me, till eventually, the human mace lord Elder of the Moon bit me in the head and latched on firmly and shook me around by the head, tearing apart the muscle. And even though I drank a number of potions to the point where I was vomiting and healed, I didn't wake up. So he simply chewed me to death and struck me to death with his shield. The final blow was dealt by his shield, in fact. And even though the attack was deflected by my copper helm, it twisted the neck, tearing the fat, and likely shattering my spine. Rest in peace, Olin, young dwarf. You died too young, but probably had some more exciting experiences than most dwarfs have in a lifetime. We seem to have failed the quest, however, and could probably do better. Maybe next time I won't follow the gods' guidance, and instead, as a dwarven outsider, taking quests that I do not deserve. Glory to Armok, God of Blood. So, for full transparency, this is a streamed run which took place the day that this update came out. I had quite a bit of trouble with crashing initially, and also was kind of taken aback at how difficult a lot of these fights were. There was actually a lot of save scumming in the run itself. I spent a lot of time reloading and saving and reloading and saving to try and figure out how to actually get through these fights. But overall, I'm very excited about this update. I think it's actually added a lot of really cool content to the game, especially in a world where the procedural elements of Dwarf Fortress are eventually going to be completely moddable using Lua. I think that this is a really exciting addition to the game, honestly. I know this one is a little bit shorter than the rest of the videos that I've made in this format, but I really wanted to get something out that was bite-sized and piecemeal, covering adventure mode. I still have a project waiting in the wings where I recover the shield of the blockade, but as adventure mode has gotten more updates, and the visual elements have changed, my old footage might not be so good for that. So I'm thinking I'm going to wait a little bit longer, and then re-record all of that footage for that video eventually. It's not going to be super long, probably around the same length as this one even, but here's a teaser for the art. Thank you very much for watching these videos, and if you want to support the work that I do directly, you can watch the VODs that are edited into these videos on my VODs channel, or by tuning into my streams at twitch.tv/BLINDIRL. I also stream on this YouTube channel. And if you want more content like this, I recommend my recent video on Caves of Qud. It's about an hour long, and should be quite the tale. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at some point in the future. Pum pum. Pum pum.